Once again, taking your Bibles and turn to John chapter 8. Starting verse 1. Jesus went unto the Mount of Olives. And early in the morning he came again into the temple, and all the people came unto him, and he sat down and taught them. And the scribes and the Pharisees brought unto him a woman taken in adultery. When they had set her in the midst, they say unto him, Master, this woman was taken in adultery in the very act. Now Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned. But what sayest thou? This they said, tempting him, that they might have to accuse him. But Jesus stooped down, and with his finger wrote on the ground, as though he heard them not. So when they continued asking him, he lifted up himself and said unto them, He that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her. And again he stooped down and wrote on the ground. And they which heard it, being convicted by their own conscience, went out one by one, beginning at the eldest even unto the last. And Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst. When Jesus had lifted up himself and saw none but the woman, he said unto her, Woman, where are those thine accusers? Hath no man condemned thee? She said, No man, Lord. And Jesus said unto her, Neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more. Then spake Jesus again unto them, saying, I am the light of the world. He that followeth me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life. The Pharisees therefore said unto him, Thou bearest record of thyself. Thy record is not true. Jesus answered and said unto them, Though I bear record of myself, yet my record is true. For I know whence I came and whither I go. But ye cannot tell whence I come, or whither I go. Ye judge after the flesh. I judge no man. And yet if I judge, my judgment is true. For I am not alone, but I and the Father that sent me. It is also written in your law that the testimony of two men is true. I am one that bear witness of myself, and the Father that sent me beareth witness of me. Then said they unto him, Where is thy Father? Jesus answered, Ye neither know me nor my Father. If ye had known me, you should have known my Father also. These words spake Jesus in the treasury, as he taught in the temple, and no man laid hands on him, for his hour was not yet come. So you can see where he was at. Okay, he was in the treasury, and he was teaching them in the temple. And of course, they wanted to bring accusations against him. The title of the message this afternoon is Light and Darkness. Light and darkness. This chapter shows Christ in conflict with the Jewish leaders and presents a series of important contrasts. And I only have one point this afternoon that will cover all this, but the point is the one who only can forgive sins. The one who can only forgive sins. The scribes and Pharisees brought a woman. And they brought her to Jesus in the court of the women in the treasury section of the temple, there in verse 20. Their motive was to test him in verse 6 and force him into a dilemma. This they said, tempting him that they might have to accuse him. So that was their goal. And many times it's going to be people's goals to try to, test us and put us in various situations that they will try to trip us up. If he set the woman free, he violated Moses' law. And we want to see this because there's an important issue here we have to take a look at. So turn over to Leviticus chapter 20. Leviticus 20 and verse 10. Leviticus 20 and verse 10. And this isn't our main focus this afternoon, but we want to bring this out so we can see exactly what was going on, what they were trying to accuse him of. So again, chapter 20 of Leviticus and verse 10, it says, "And the man that committeth adultery with another man's wife, even he that committeth adultery with his neighbor's wife, the adulterer and the adulteress shall surely be put to death." That's the law. So then, turn over to Deuteronomy chapter 22. Deuteronomy chapter 22 and verse 22. And in verse 22 there of 22, "If a man be found lying with a woman married to a husband, then they shall both of them die, both the man that lay with the woman and the woman. So shalt thou put away evil from Israel." Okay, that's the law. If he had her stoned, he could not claim to be the one who forgives sin. So you can see that there is a little bit of dilemma there, but something very curious to note. They brought the woman, but where's the man? They caught them both. They had to both be there. I mean, if you caught them in the act, the guy had to be there, right? What's the law say? Both of them die. Jesus never brought that to their attention. Now, A.W. Pink suggests that Christ wrote on the ground with his finger twice to remind them of the two tablets of the law written with the finger of God. Now look at Exodus. Go back and look at Exodus chapter 31. Because he bent down twice. He stooped down there twice and wrote on the ground twice. Now, I don't know what he wrote. There's no record of what he wrote. So there's no use of trying to figure out what he wrote. But I think they got the point, whatever it was. But in chapter 31 of Exodus, look at verse 18, and it says, "And he gave unto Moses, when he had made an end of communing with him upon Mount Sinai, 2 tablets of testimony, tables of stone, written with the finger of God." Then look over in chapter 32 and verse 15 through 18. "And Moses turned and went down from the mount, and the 2 tables of the testimony were in his hand, and the tables were written on both their sides. On the one side and on the other were they written. And the tables were the work of God, and the writing was the writing of God graven upon the tables. And when Joshua heard the noise of the people as they shouted, he said unto Moses, There is a noise of war in the camp. And he said, It is not the voice of them that shout for mastery, neither is it the voice of them that cry of or for being overcome, but the noise of them that sing do I hear." And then look at chapter 34 and verse 1. And the Lord said unto Moses, Hew thee 2 tablets of stone like unto the first, and I will write upon these tablets, or tables, the words that were in the first tables which thou breakest. The Jews sinned. Everyone knows what the Jews did. They sinned. And Moses broke the first stone tablets on the ground, but God forgave their sin, provided blood sacrifices, and gave them another set of tablets. Christ died for the sins of this woman and was able to forgive her. Now, we won't read it, but the interesting part here with Moses and God at this point was, God said there's rebellion in the camp and I'm going down and I'm going to take care of it. Basically destroy Israel. And Moses said, oh, now wait a minute. And I'm paraphrasing this, but this is the way when I read this and I look at it, he had to argue with him, of course. He says, you just brought us out of Egypt. Now how's this going to look to our enemies if you destroy all the ones you just brought out? So he's kind of arguing with God a little bit about it. And this shows our depravity, because when Moses come down and seen what was going on, he got so mad he threw the tablets on the ground and they broke. He wanted God to forgive him, but Moses wasn't willing to forgive him, see? And we live that every day. God forgive them, but I'm not. Moses was irate, but he pleaded with God not to kill him. So it just gives us another understanding of our depraved nature and how we view things and how we do things. See, the great I am statement in verse 12 follows this incident. Let me get back to my text here in John chapter 8. In John chapter 8 then, and in verse 12, we see, Then spake Jesus again unto them, saying, I am the light of the world. He that followeth me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life. So as the light of the world, Christ claimed to be God, for God is light. And in 1 John 1:5, you don't have to turn there, but it says, This then is the message which we have heard of him, and declare unto you that God is light, and in him is no darkness at all. Darkness speaks of death, ignorance, and sin. Light speaks of life, knowledge, and holiness. In the beginning, darkness was upon the face of the deep. In other words, there was this great void. Basically, chaos, because nothing was actually, put together at the time. Then in John it says, verse 1, that Jesus was the one who created everything. So what happened was, because then God said, let there be light, and there was light. Well, if you ever, and the best way to illustrate this is, you can do this anywhere, or go into a dark room of somebody that you know. I don't think anybody still does photography anymore, but if they do, ask to go in the dark room. It's pitch black. You can't see your hand in front of your face. Light a candle or have a flashlight, and that light will absorb all that darkness. That's what Jesus does. He absorbs darkness. Takes it all away. Wherever the word darkness, most generally in the Bible, where it's used, is referring to evil, is referring to Satan. Everywhere the word light is used is referring to Christ. So, the light reproves sin. In John 3:20 and 21 says, For everyone that doeth evil hateth the light, neither cometh to the light, let his deeds should be reproved, but he that doeth truth cometh to the light, that his deeds may be made manifest, that they are wrought in God. It's from God. That's how we know that it's from God. Now, we just spoke on here a couple weeks ago about abstain from all appearances of sin, because all appearances of sin has an amount of darkness in them. And we're just supposed to get away from that as fast as we can. But the lost sinner lives in darkness. Turn to Ephesians chapter 2. Ephesians chapter 2 and verse 1. And you hath he quickened, who were dead in trespasses and sins, wherein in time past you walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that now worketh in the children of disobedience, among whom also we all had our conversation in time past in the lust of our flesh, fulfilling the desires of the flesh and of the mind, and were by nature the children of wrath, even as others. And that's what's going on today. The lost people are doing this today because they know no better. They haven't got a clue. Look at chapter 4 and verse 17. This I say, therefore, and testify in the Lord, that ye henceforth walk not as other Gentiles walk, in the vanity of their mind. So that's how they are walking. And then in verse 18, having the understanding darkened, being alienated from the life of God through the ignorance that is in them because of the blindness of their heart, who being past feeling have given themselves over unto lasciviousness, to work all uncleanness with greediness. We can see what's happening today. They're working out their own sin. They're working out their own depravity. Does it make it right? No, it doesn't make it right. And then Paul states here in chapter 5 and verse 8, For we were sometimes darkness, but now are ye light, and the Lord walk as children of the light. So the lost sinner lives in darkness and will spend eternity in darkness. And cast ye the unprofitable servant into our outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth, in Matthew 25:30, if he rejects Christ. Our cockerel one time asked me, he says, how do you think people that are going to be cast into the lake of fire, or even better yet, he says, the people that are in hell right now. When you think of the rich man, Luke 16. And in hell he lifted up his eyes, being in torments. He says, how do you think their demeanor is? I said, well, I really never thought about it, but I would think that they'd want to repent, change their ways. I mean, that's what you would think. But he said, go back and read it again and call me back. So I went back and I read it again. And I said, I said, he never did say he was sorry for what he did. He never apologized. He wanted his brethren, his family, to realize there was a place like this, and he didn't really want them to go there, but he never once apologized for what he had done, or what his sinful condition was. And he says, I surmise, Brother Cockrell said, I surmise that folks in hell, those who are going to be thrown in the lake of fire, will curse God just as hard as when they were alive today. Think about that. No remorse. They're not asking to get out. The rich man didn't say, I want out of here. Help me, Father Abraham, I want to get out of this torments. He never did that because he knew. He knew. So Matthew tells us there's going to be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Can you imagine hell or the lake of fire? Let's go to the lake of fire. Lake of fire, pitch black, can't see nothing. But you hear screams. You hear cursings. You hear God, people cursing God for them being there. And yelling. And the worm feasting upon their flesh, because it says where the worm dieth not. And the torments will be in. And here's the part I have a hard time. You know, the rich man is in hell right now, in torments. Can you imagine lake of fire being worse than that? And the other thing is, there's going to be different degrees in hell. I can't even comprehend that. I mean, what's worse than being on fire all your life? For eternity, for the rest of your forever. I mean, there is no end. There's no reprieve. There's no slick lawyer that's going to get you out of that. You go there and you're done. And you're going to be there for eternity. See, that's why I think it's so imperative for churches to get that gospel out. Tell people about Jesus Christ. You tell your families, your friends, anybody you can possibly tell, because that's where they're going. This is where they're headed. And I really don't want to see that for anybody. I mean, I get mad at some people and upset with people, lost people. And yeah, they may deserve it, but I don't want to see that. So the Jews here, instead of submitting to Christ, argued with him in the temple. Isn't that what we did before we were saved? We argued. We argued with God. We argued with anybody that wanted to preach the gospel to us. I know Brother Ross's testimony. He gets up here and he says, I got to the place I didn't want to go to work because this guy wouldn't leave me alone. And then one day, the Lord saved him. You know what Brother Ross wanted to do? Go on, tell everybody. Tell everybody what happened to him. He became that man who had presented the gospel to him. He wanted to do the same thing to others. I got it now, see? I got it. That's what I wanted to do. I told my mom, it's kind of went like that, But when I was saved, that's exactly what I wanted to do. I want to tell everybody. I want everybody to see and know what I knew at that point. So, we see this argument. We have that today. Everyone wants to argue. Even church members want to argue. People want to find salvation in everything but Christ. They want to submit to philosophies and science. They want to destroy the Bible or just forget the Old Testament. Sodomy is a way of life instead of being sinful and wicked. And we all want to point the finger at someone else and take no responsibility for our own actions. And as they did here, people would rather see someone put to death for something they are guilty of themselves. As far as I'm concerned, and I think you'd agree, these folks were guilty. I'd say probably the man was one of their best buddies. Didn't want to see him get in any trouble, so they just overlooked that. I worked in a factory for 30 plus years, and I was under the union, and I seen how the union took care of their friends. See, they wouldn't take care of me because I didn't go out and drink with them and do all the other stuff they were doing. That's the ones they protected the most. So here's the bottom line. We need to realize Satan is in the world today. And he is out to destroy us. He's out to destroy you. He's out to destroy your spouse. He's out to destroy me. He's out to destroy this church. That's what he wants to do. And everything that is good, and especially anyone who is trying to live a holy life before God, he wants destroyed. That's his goal. Now, if you can't see that, then just look at our government and our president. That's what he's doing. See, that's what he's trying to do. Satan is working in them to get to us. And it would be just wonderful that if they could do that. You know, when I wrote the governor about COVID, and he started, you getting on his little TV show there, and, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and he start saying, well, the churches, they have to sit so many feet apart. And they have to have masks on. Can't take the offering up because you'll pass the germs. You can't sing because you got to use songbooks. He's doing all this. I said, what? I wrote him a letter. And I told him, I said, Congress shall make no law, Governor. What part of that don't you understand? I said, you can't tell the church what they can and cannot do. That's not your job. And I said, nor will we listen. I said, I'm not going to listen to you. I said, there's only one person who watches over the church, and I said, that's God. And we only listen to one person when it comes to what we do and not do in the church, and that's God. And you're not him. They want to destroy us. Why else would they be involved? And I have to believe other pastors wrote him too. I told my wife, I said, we're going to listen to him. It was on a Wednesday. I said, we're going to listen to him. And about 10 minutes into the speech, I said, he got my letter. I could tell. I could tell by the way he was talking and being careful about his wording. And he never mentioned the church ever again. Never. Now, I'm not saying it was because of me. I'm sure, like I said, other pastors had wrote him letters, but he left the church alone. He's not the Savior. I said, what are you trying to do? I said, you can't save anybody. I said, if it isn't COVID, it's going to kill people. It's other things. I said, you're not going to be able to stop it. We have an appointed day to die. That's it. There's nothing you can do about it. And that's what he was trying to do. Well, I'm going to save lives. Can't. Impossible. But if you still look, that's what government's trying to do. And eventually they're going to get a foothold. But they're after us, and they want to see us go under. But the leadership there is Satan. May God have his, give you grace and comfort the rest of this week.